In this video, we're going to continue looking at the shifters of supply in a little bit more detail. We only have two left, so we will wrap this up in this video, I would imagine. Before we get started, something that I've said at the top of every one of these videos, at least for the kind of our supply shifters, is that let's remember that supply is a function of production costs, right? So in this one, especially the one we're going to start with, it doesn't tie in as directly, right? Or really doesn't really tie in that great at all. But for most of these supply shifters, we're looking at changes in production costs leading to the changes in the supply of a good. All right. So just a quick reminder, I've already kind of harped on this in like 3 or 4 of these videos, so we'll stop there and we'll just move on to our first shifter of supply. All right, and that is the number of sellers. We could think the number of producers, however you want to think about it. All right, just right off the bat, let's say, so as the number of sellers increases, the supply of a good is going to increase as well. Right, this one we're probably not going to spend a whole lot of time on. This video might be the shortest out of this entire series, actually. All right, but it's kind of straightforward. If more people are selling something, then there's going to be more of it available, right? That just kind of makes sense. The opposite would also be true. All right, if the number of sellers decreases, then we would expect supply to decrease as well. All right, this one's fairly intuitive. All right, but let's kind of look at this a little bit more. Anyways. All right, so we're going to do something very simple, and hopefully I leave myself enough room and I don't have to start this over 5 times. Oh, that's terrible. All right. So we're going to look at this a little differently than we have in some of these. All right. All right, so we're going to start with a blank thing, and then I've got a little supply table thing over here. All right, so we're going to start and say that our first we're going to start with our canned soda. We're going to say the only member of this market is Coca-Cola. All right, so they're the only ones producing soda, and then I just gave a very, very simple price and quantity supplied schedule. Right, so we could go ahead and chart these, and we'll just say that, let's see, well, yeah, so we'll just do this. So 1, 2, this might have been a bad idea. We'll see. All right, so for now, that's really all we need. 1, 2, 3. If we run out of space, we run out of space. All right, so we could plot our supply curve, right? So again, just this kind of the idea of the XY grid, right? So we have our original here, right? So if the price is 1, the quantity supplied will be 1. If the price is 2, 2, so on and so forth, right? Now let's add an additional seller. And I'm going to just go ahead and erase this, and I'm going to use this for everything else. So let's say that we introduce Pepsi. All right, so for simplicity's sake, we're going to assume that Pepsi and Coke have the same kind of schedule here. Actually, let's change it a little bit. We can change it a little bit. This will probably make it easier for me later on. All right, yeah, so let's do this. All right, so for Pepsi, right, at a price of 1, 0 units are provided. At 2, there's 1. At 3, there's 2. At 4, there's 3. So on, yeah, but not so on and so forth. That was the end of it. All right, so we could draw out our kind of curve, right? But we're not going to do that because what we're really looking at is the supply curve. The market supply curve is the sum of all of these supply curves, right? So we don't really necessarily need to draw that Pepsi one, but this is important information, so we want to have written that down, right? what we're looking at now, all right, so our shock, right, the shock in this case is that Pepsi joins the market. So the number of the number of sellers has increased, right, and that's going to give us a new market supply. Right, so now at a price of 1, right, well, at price of 1, there's still only 1 unit being provided, right, because Coke's providing 1, Pepsi is providing 0. Then at 2, Coke is providing 2, and Pepsi is providing 3 or 1, so we have 3. Then at a price of 3, Coke is providing 3 units, Pepsi is providing 2, so for the market that's a total of 5. And then for the fourth, that is going to be 7, right? At a price of 4, Coke is supplying 4. At a price of 4, Pepsi is providing 3. So at a total, right, there is 7. All right, so when we have added these two together, and we'll use purple, that's red and blue together. All right, so 1 and 1, all right, so kind of that's the same spot right here. All right, 2 and 3. 3 and 5. And then 4 and 7. All right, so this would be something along the lines of what this would look like, right? And so you can see with that, it's not as clear as kind of our straight lines, and that's because it's we've got these like kind of real numbers. But we can still, even though they kind of run together right here, and that's just because we don't have any data for this, so we can't really graph it, right? But we can see that there is a shift to the right, for our supply curve, right? And that is because the number of producers has increased, the number of sellers has increased, right? Because if we have a new seller, right, obviously they are going to provide some units of this good at the different prices, so those get added on to the other firms in the market, and so we see that shift in supply. All right, so that's all there is to that one. So let's go ahead and move on to the last one. Changes and opportunity costs. All right, so this one can be one of the trickier ones to really wrap your head around, although I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. All right, so if we remember, and hopefully we do from chapter 2, what opportunity costs are. Opportunity costs are the costs or the value of the best option foregone, right? So the best thing you gave up to do what you're currently doing, those are your opportunity costs. All right, so if opportunity costs increase, then supply is going to decrease. If opportunity costs decrease, supply is going to increase. Right? This should make sense to us because opportunity costs are costs, right? It's in the name. Right? So opportunity costs are costs, and throughout this entire section, right, we've seen that if the costs of production increase, then the supply is going to decrease, right, and vice versa. Right? So when we have a change in opportunity costs, right, that's going to cause a decrease in supply. All right, before I do my little example, let me just kind of quickly run through the logic behind this, right? So when we are looking at these opportunity costs, right, it's the value of the next best option, right, or the best option foregone. Right, so if your opportunity costs are increasing, it means the value of that option are increasing. Right? Well, if let's say, visual aids, right? Let's say the blue marker is what we're currently doing, right? And the purple marker is our next best option, right? I'm trying to see, can I move these to where I'm not standing in front of them? No, not really. All right, so what we might start off with is something like this, all right? So the value of our what we're doing, right, is higher than the value of our next best option, right? This would have to be the case, otherwise we'd be doing the other thing, right? So as the value of the next best option, right, or our opportunity costs, as those increase, right, the likelihood that we will switch from the blue, right, or what we're currently doing, to the purple, which is kind of the next best option, right, increases, right? And if we're looking at just opportunity costs for a market as a whole, right, those aren't always going to be quite the same. So for one firm, right, the value of the next thing might surpass things, right, sooner than for others. But regardless, that's kind of what we're getting to. If they increase enough, right, then the option that we gave up might become more valuable, right? And so some suppliers are going to switch from what we were originally producing to the next best option, which is now more valuable than what we're currently doing, and so it becomes the best option, right? And so we want to do that. All right, that is just, in general, that's kind of what we're talking about, these opportunity costs. All right, so here's my example, and this isn't a graphical example. The graph is going to look similar to all the other graphs we've done, but this is more kind of to understand the concept behind this. All right, we're going to look at Farmer Brown. All right, so Farmer Brown has a plot of land. All right. And Farmer Brown can either plant sweet potatoes or peanuts in this field. All right, for simplicity's sake, let's just assume that the costs of doing either option are equal. All right, and let's say that the sweet potato, why did I say sweet potatoes? SP, sweet potatoes. All right, that the price of sweet potatoes is equal to, let's actually write that. So the price of sweet potatoes is equal to 200, and the price of peanuts is equal 175. All right, so you can think of this as the entire crop or some section. It really doesn't matter. All right, the same stuff is gonna happen. All right, so if the price of sweet potatoes is 200, the price of peanuts is 175. Right, which of these crops should Farmer Brown plant? All right, hopefully we said sweet potatoes, right? Because if the price for sweet potatoes is higher and the costs of producing them are the same, right, then you're going to make more money on the sweet potatoes. So we're going to say that Farmer Brown, all right, plants these sweet potatoes. So the peanuts, all right, the value of the peanuts are her opportunity cost. All right, so plants sweet potatoes. All right, the opportunity costs are the value of growing peanuts. All right, and so now let's introduce our shock. All right, let's say that the price of peanuts increases. So I guess I should clarify that we're looking at the market for sweet potatoes. All right, so we're looking at the market for sweet potatoes. All right, partially because that's the first thing that we picked, and so we need something different for the shock. All right, so we're planting sweet potatoes. We're looking at the supply of sweet potatoes. All right, now our shock is that the price of peanuts increases to 205. All right, well, that is an increase in opportunity costs. All right, now again, if we're looking at the market as a whole, right, this doesn't need to surpass the value of the kind of the sweet potatoes. actually, you know what, don't worry about that. Let's just stick with Farmer Brown. So, okay, so now the supply, all right, the price of the peanuts is up to 205. Right, that's 5 more than the value of the sweet potatoes, right? And assuming that Farmer Brown can easily switch between the two crops, which we are going to do for simplicity's sake, right? Then what's likely to happen is that Farmer Brown is going to switch to peanuts, right? Because now, right, if now the price of peanuts or the value of peanuts is higher, right, the cost of producing those goods stays the same. So now, right, peanuts are more valuable relative to sweet potatoes. All right, so that is an increase in opportunity costs. And so the supply for sweet potatoes, right, which is what we're looking at, is going to go down, right? Because Farmer Brown is going to switch from growing, that's the word I was looking for. Farmer Brown is going to switch from growing sweet potatoes to growing peanuts, right? So all of the sweet potatoes that she was going to supply now or in the future, right, those are no longer there, right? And so we see that shift in supply because kind of this one kind of latches on to that idea of number of sellers, which is good because that's the last thing we covered, so it's still in this video, right? So if the number of sellers goes down, supply is going to go down, right? And that's what's happening with the sweet potatoes. Because the opportunity costs increased, right? Some producers switched from producing sweet potatoes to producing peanuts, right? So when those producers left the market for sweet potatoes, right, the number of sellers went down, and so supply went down as well. All right, so that's how kind of these changes in opportunity costs are going to work. All right, but I think that's where we're going to end it. That's kind of covered everything, or the last two of these shifters in this video. All right, but just to recap, although I kind of just did, right? The number of sellers, right? The way that's going to affect supply is that if the number of sellers increases, it's going to increase supply because there are more people supplying the good at those different prices, right? If the number of sellers goes down, supply is going to go down, right? Related to that is this idea of changes in opportunity costs, right? Ultimately, right, changes in opportunity costs are changes in costs. So if we just remember that, we'll know that when opportunity costs increase, supply decreases, and when opportunity costs decrease, supply increases, right? And then kind of the mechanism through that is because when opportunity costs increase, some producers switch to the other good, right? The number of sellers in our original market goes down, and so the supply goes down, right? But as I said, that is it. That covers us for kind of our look at supply. So the next thing that we will be doing, if we're looking at these in the order I put them up, the next thing we will be doing is looking into Chapter 4, which is on equilibrium. And this is where we're going to actually start putting our supply and demand curves together, right, and looking and seeing at what that does. All right, but that will be in the next video. I will see you then.